What's up, guys? In the last video, we talked on the basics of how to start a food truck. So getting that capital, creating that brand, and having an amazing product to get that food truck going. Today, we'll talk about staffing the food truck. So getting that food truck up and running and staffing it for your events, your weddings, and your breweries. So for staffing that food truck, first, when you get that food truck up and going, you guys, the owners, should be on that truck as much as possible. That way you can make sure the food is being prepared correctly and the customers are experience that food the way you want them to experience. That is so important because those beginning stages, those beginning months of operating that food truck are so important to get that brand launched to the next step. For us, Robert and I were on that truck all the time, and that helped us really get growing quickly in the beginning because we knew and we were passionate about that product going out the window. Though, when you're ready for the next step and you've got your processes in place on the truck and you're able to train your staff exactly the way you want them to serve the product, then you can start hiring staff. You can reach out on Indeed, Facebook. What worked really well for us is just talking to other food trucks and restaurateurs in the industry, seeing if they had anybody they knew that wanted to work on a food truck or needed a job, or even friends and family. I think that's really the best way to start hiring on a food truck. Not hiring your friends and family, but seeing if they know somebody that has experience and that is willing to work on the truck. The biggest thing I always did when hiring somebody on the food truck is I would sit them down, I would interview them, and I'd give them all the realities of a food truck. So at least for us here in Iowa, it's extremely hot on the food truck, and that's not always the most enjoyable, but it's just a quick 2-3 hour stints. And then I always let them know it's extremely fast paced and it's somewhat grueling physically. I'm always extremely open to them in the very beginning on pay and the conditions of the work environment because I don't want any surprises when they do decide to work for us, because that's basically will lead them to either quitting or just having bad morale while at the job. So it's always best to just get it all out in front and let them know the reality of how it's going to be to work on the food truck. And secondly, when you're hiring someone for the food truck, hire them as a 1099. It's just simpler than putting them on as a W-2. It just makes the payment and the taxes at the end of the year a lot simpler because you're only going to have maybe 1, 2, 3 1099 staff members. It's just easier. When you do get to that next step, or if you are big enough, going to W-2 is a better option, but it's easier and simpler in the beginning stages just to bring them on as 1099 contractors. And then lastly, the biggest, most important thing about staffing is making sure you're paying them a good wage, tips, and last but not least, and the most important thing is culture. Make it a welcoming and fun culture for them at the workplace so they want to come to work. I think that's the biggest thing we hear from other staff, or our staff and employees that come work for us, is that their last job was stressful, the boss was mean, the employees didn't get along. That is why they left. Nothing ever, really, rarely ever do they complain about pay. It's mostly about that culture and their boss. Robert and I make sure we have a fun and inviting culture that allows our staff to really enjoy their job and put their full effort into the job and want to come to work. So that's the biggest thing, man, is get that culture going, have a fun time with your employees, pay them well, and make sure they're enjoying what they are doing. Because the minute they stop enjoying that, that will reflect on the food and the customer experience. So again, getting those employees, Indeed, Facebook, we suggest asking your friends and family or your restaurant and food truck friends if they know anybody in the industry that has experience and is wanting to work on the food truck, and being honest with them when you are hiring them about the work conditions and the pay. Secondly, bring them on as a 1099 contractor in the beginning and then moving them to a W-2 in the future. And last but not least, making sure you have a great culture for them to work in, making sure it's fun, light, and a stress-free environment as much as possible. Again, guys, that's how we here at Charlotte's Kitchen would suggest doing a food truck for staffing. Staff is important. Make sure you treat them right, guys. Drop a like, a comment, and share this with your friends and family, guys. Peace. Love ya.